Discover the best in local business news with a subscription to the IBJ and Inside Indiana Business. For a limited time, try us out for just $1 a week for 8 weeks. Claim this limited time offer now at ibj.com/trial offer.
Off the Record with the Indiana 250 Most Influential Hoosiers is brought to you by Prolific, the growth firm. When growth stalls, CEOs turn to Prolific to plan, execute, and achieve what's next.
I would like to be more perfect, but I have to lean into good. Don't get hung up on certain rules and certain titles. I never asked how much I was going to make. I never asked what my title was going to be. If asked to do something, I said yes. For the longest time, I didn't have a resume because I never needed one. I basically would do well in the jobs that I was in, and that would provide opportunities for others.
Welcome to Off the Record, a podcast featuring leaders on IBJ Media's Indiana 250 list. I'm Nate Feltman, CEO of IBJ Media, which publishes the Indiana 250, a list of the most influential business people in Indiana. Today, I'm joined by Anne Hathaway, President and CEO of Hathaway Strategies, a grassroots public affairs firm in Indianapolis, built on Anne's decades of political experience in federal, state, and local Republican politics. Anne's interest in politics dates back to her days growing up in the small town of Galva, Illinois, where her mother volunteered for local campaigns and took Anne along. After a high school guidance counselor steered Anne away from politics, telling her that politics was just a hobby, she majored in interior design at the University of Illinois. She ultimately ignored that guidance counselor and jumped into politics and public service, eventually landing a job in Washington, D.C. at the U.S. Treasury Department. She worked at Treasury until being lured to the White House to work in the administration of George H.W. Bush and served as Director of Scheduling and Public Liaison for Vice President Dan Quayle. She also worked for the Republican National Committee and has been deeply involved in the inner workings of many Republican national conventions. Anne returned to Indiana in 2009 and started her public affairs business, where she helps clients navigate the world of federal, state, and local politics. She became the first woman to chair the Indiana Republican State Committee when she was chosen for that role by Governor Eric Holcomb in 2023. She also currently represents Indiana on the National Committee. Republican National Committee. Among her non-political roles, Anne is president of the Columbia Club in downtown Indianapolis. She's executive director of the Indiana Medical Device Manufacturers Council. And I know one of her most prized roles is being the longtime executive director of the Richard G. Lugar Excellence in Public Service series. That organization, named for Indiana's longest-serving senator, has trained more than 550 women to engage in public service and, of course, politics. Anne chairs and serves on many local and national nonprofit boards and is a sought-after speaker, especially about the current state of political affairs, which we'll get into a little bit, and the leadership roles women can play in business and politics. She's an IBJ Woman of Influence and a perennial member of IBJ's 250 Most Influential Business and Community Leaders. And it's such a great honor to have you on the Indiana 250 podcast. I've been really looking forward to having our conversation.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here and really humbled by the recognition I've received. Thank you.
Well, you're deserving. So I always start with guests kind of at the beginning. And as I mentioned in the intro, you grew up in Galva, Illinois. And you tried your darndest, it sounds like, to stay away from politics. You even had a counselor who said, that's not a long-term professional opportunity. And you majored in interior design. Talk a little bit about growing up in Galva, but also, deciding that interior design wasn't going to be your major focus for your career.
Sure. Galva, Illinois is a population at that time about 2,500, less now, but it was the idyllic childhood. My parents were small business people. My dad was a plumbing heating contractor. He outgrew the garage, bought a hardware store. He worked out of the back end. My mom worked out of the front end. And my first experience with politics was going with my mom to polling places where she would make phone calls. And I would those were days when we had large stacks of bumper stickers, and I would grab them. I was very young, and I would stick them on anything and everything. So I was a great bumper sticker girl. But candidates would come to my parents and ask them to contribute or to want to meet with community leaders about their campaigns. And so I was always there hanging out. My parents had coffees in their homes. And the other thing I did in my small town was go with my dad to coffee. There was a coffee shop, and at 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock every day, the men in the community would go to this coffee shop and talk. There were two tables, the businessman's table and the farmer's table. They would talk among their tables, but then they would talk to each other. And what I saw growing up were individuals getting involved in their community, solving problems, fixing things. You were a member of the Chamber of Commerce. My dad was part of starting a bank in our little community that was really farmer focused. And so that was my upbringing. So it wasn't politics in the terms that we think of today and billion-dollar campaigns. It was really a problem solver and engagement and looking out for my community.
Yeah.
So at that time, I went to college trying to figure out how to major in something that would get me to where I wanted to go. And I was a 20-year 4-H'er, 10 years in the Ag Club, 10 years in the Home Ec Club. I wanted to go to the University of Illinois, Big Ten University, College of Ag, land-grant college. And so I ended up as an interior design major, but immediately got involved in things on campus. I lived at 4-H house. It was a cooperative sorority. We were not members of Penn Hell. In October of my junior year, we joined. In November of my junior year, I was elected vice president. I was involved in campus elections, leadership programs, which then spurred me on. And then I came back to Galva. It was the Depression. There was no jobs in that period of time. I got involved in local campaigns, putting up yard signs. My first paid job in a campaign was as yard sign coordinator on a congressional campaign. My candidate lost twice. And I decided that I would get in a car, drive to Washington, D.C. Somebody who knew somebody needed an assistant. I took a job as a GS4 clerk typist. I flunked the typing test 3 times, but I was going to stay 6 to 8 months, and it was the beginning of a long career in the business.
So have you put that interior design degree to work at all so far?
In my home and my friends' homes, but no one compensates me for my knowledge.
Well, I bet your home looks great though, and your friends' homes.
You got to be there.
So I want to start with something a little less serious.
Yes.
And that is to ask you, you've got a name that's very famous. So you've got the wife of William Shakespeare. And of course, there's an actress well known as Anne Hathaway. I've read that there are some funny stories along the way. Tell me like what some of the interesting things that have happened just because your name happens to be a famous name.
Sure. In the 2012 convention, I was the program director. The Romney campaign had asked me to go down and work on the program from that convention. And it so happened as I was doing that, the other Anne Hathaway was having a fundraiser for the other side up in the Hamptons, I think. And so that became a news story. It's so funny. When I walk in, people go, "I've heard of you." And you never know whether it was their English class, the actress, the fact that we're doing the remake of The Devil Wore Prada, our version 2, I'm popular again. And there have been incidents and hotel room, or when I walk up to a hotel desk, and the look of the person's face when it's just me.
Have they come through with some upgrades for you though in advance before you got there?
Yes, and I've also gotten tables at restaurants. So
That's funny.
At one point I was like, I was so embarrassed, and it was so complicated, and then I just embraced it and made it fun.
Did your parents know it was a famous name when they?
No, 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 and it's interesting because it's a very English name. My grandmother was born on the Isle of Man, so it's all part of my real heritage. Yeah. But it's my real name, and it's also hers.
Yes, exactly. That's how I think of it. So, you mentioned a little bit about your first job in D.C. Was that at the Treasury Department that you were describing when you were talking about that kind of entry level job? So, how did that job actually come? That was your first start in D.C. You're in D.C. You're working at Treasury. Talk a little bit about that experience and how you found that opportunity.
So I went to Morton Blackwell's Leadership Institute, which was a training program for young people who wanted to be involved in campaigns and politics. And It's the relationship business. It's what we teach in the Lugar series and what we teach in business. Relationships. And somebody who knew somebody needed an assistant. I took a job as the typist and the assistant. My second day of work was the day that Don Regan and James A. Baker III changed jobs. And so everything was in turmoil as people changed jobs. I was detailed for the White House. Imagine you go to DC and on day 2 or 3, you're detailed for the White House for a couple weeks, to answer somebody's phone. Then I was sent back to Treasury, and, the 2 women I'd been assigned to work for, asked me to deliver a piece of paper up to the 3rd floor, which was the executive floor. I did. And this woman, who turned out to be the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Public Liaison, reporting directly to Margaret Tutwiler, who reported directly to Mr. Baker, said to me, "Who are you and what do you do?" I said, this is like my 3rd week. This is who I work for. I'm on your org chart." And she said, "Well, I'm interviewing for assistants. Would you mind sitting out here and being my assistant until I nail it down?" And I never left. So I worked for her for 3.5 years before we went to, when Mr. Baker was named George H.W. Bush's campaign manager, 8 of us were plucked out of the Treasury and sent to the campaign, where I became a scheduler for the vice presidential nominee, who turned out to be Dan Quayle.
Yeah.
My first boss at the campaign was Susie Wiles, Donald Trump's current chief of staff. And within a week, it was determined that Dan and Marilyn Quayle couldn't travel well together. She didn't like being a potted plant. The campaign staff didn't like that she would help him with his remarks. And so they said, "Who wants to be Marilyn Quayle's scheduler?" The Midwestern work ethic, and I'll do it.
Yeah.
I became Marilyn Quayle's scheduler. I had a volunteer to sign thank you notes. Mary Moses Cochran became the personal aide and traveled with her. And the naivety of me, Nate, they pulled me into a room. They looked at a map and read off all these cities that she should go to. What I didn't know at the time, because I was so busy writing, they were in target states, key media markets, and they told me I had X amount of budget and to make it happen. And that's what I did for 2 months.
That's amazing. Well, that's such an awesome story. But I want to ask you, did you have some interactions? Did you get the opportunity to have any interactions with James Baker?
Mm-hmm.
Because he is such he's one of my, I'll say, heroes, and just that maybe just such a fascinating and incredible character. I read his autobiography, and one of the things that I still remember reading about, and I can't remember if it was his father or grandfather. I think it might have been his father that told him about the 5 Ps. Do you remember the 5 Ps?
I've forgotten about that. So the
5 Ps: prior preparation prevents poor performance.
Mm-hmm.
I tell my kids all the time, tell me the 5 Ps. Be prepared. But he seems just like such a incredible leader, and obviously, was an incredible leader for our country. What were your impressions?
It was an amazing experience. I learned so much in that 3.5 years at the Treasury Department. We always knew when he wore his gray Hermès tie that it was a power day, and that meant serious business, because that was his money tie, because it was green, and we were at the Treasury Department. But he had an incredibly competent, smart staff. Margaret Tutwiler was amazing. John Rogers. It was the years of Dick Darman. And the ability to be forceful, firm, smart, kind, and educators all at the same time, there was nobody better.
Wow. Yeah.
It was an amazing experience, which set me up so much for my career.
Yeah.
And
well, what you've described is what I find fascinating is that you went for it. You were in the right place. It's one thing to be in the right place at the right time. It's another thing to actually be able to build relationships. And so obviously you're a relationship builder, and I know that because I know you. But you were in the right place at the right time and built relationships. Mm-hmm. And I think it's informative to people who say, "Oh, how can I get there? How can I do that?" And part of it's you got to go for it, right?
You got to go for it. And that's what I teach so often and I talk about is taking risk, leaning in, don't say no. The people that try to be perfect, they tend to make it more difficult. I would like to be more perfect, but I have to lean into good. And I would just don't get hung up on certain rules and certain titles. I never asked how much I was going to make. I never asked what my title was going to be. If asked to do something, I said yes. For the longest time, I didn't have a resume because I never needed one. I basically would do well in the jobs that I was in, and that would provide opportunities for others. What I learned in Washington, D.C. specifically, when I was presented opportunities and I asked people for advice, they gave me advice based on what was in my best interest for them to have me in a certain position. Not was necessarily in my best interest for my growth and where I wanted to be and what would make me happy. So DC was where I always wanted to be. I thought I would stay a year. I ended up staying 8+ and went back again. But it also didn't provide me the opportunity to be a part of a community. Yeah. Every day you woke up and what was the local news was front page above the fold Washington Post at that time.
Yeah, exactly.
And we were writing that at the White House.
So tell me a little bit about your experience with Vice President Dan Quayle and his wife Marilyn. Are there a couple of takeaways or experiences that you had, with them that stand out? I mean, everybody remembers the one of the challenges on the whole potato thing, spelling the potato wrong. And I mean that.
And that had a Hoosier hook too, right?
That always. Well, you can tell me about that, but I mean that's just part of history. But what were your takeaways in terms of working with the vice president?
The Dan Quayle that I worked for wasn't the Dan Quayle that you were reading about at the time. Yeah. He was wicked smart. He'd authored and co-authored some meaningful legislation in Congress, and there was a reason that George Bush picked him at the time. Mm-hmm. Working for him was an amazing group of people that were on our team. It's where I worked with Bill Kristol, who was our chief of staff, Al Hubbard, who was our deputy chief of staff. We had a phenomenal foreign affairs team. David McIntosh was the director of domestic policy. So if you think about where all these people are now and what they've done, it was an amazing team of people. And we woke up every day trying to think about how to be a great partner to the president. The vice president had lunch once a week. And I was fortunate enough to be assistant to the vice president and director of scheduling and public liaison. I was very young. I don't know that I fully appreciated it then, the role and the responsibilities I was given, but making sure that we maximize the schedule. And he had a joke that, and I'm gonna warn you, I'm gonna swear. He used to walk and say, "Anne, you can shove 10 pounds of shit into a 6-pound bag better than anybody I know," because I would take the time and I understood the flow and the transitions, and I could maximize the trip schedule. We had a formula with regard to a local event, media, a speech, a political event, and then we would get out of town. And so we could do 2 to 3 stops a day, depending on what side of the Mississippi we were on. And it was my job to write those trips, to put the pieces together. I used to laugh that I knew people all over the country, and if you put them all into a ballroom, I'd walk in and not know anybody because I didn't know what they looked like. Yeah. But the Quayles were really, really good to me. It was it was just a great experience, and it's one of the reasons I ended up in Indiana is that he offered me the opportunity to run his political action committee, work with him on his books here. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that's not known widely is that when we first got to the White House, the vice president's children, his parents would come live with them and stay with them when they were both out of their home. Uh-huh. Well, Marilyn called me one day and said, Dan's parents can't come. would you be willing to come stay at the residence with the children and while we're out of town? And they were actually going out of the country. So I actually, and I never told my colleagues because that would have looked weird, but I did. I stayed at the residence, vice president's residence, and babysat, or they would say kids sat the children.
Yeah.
They were not allowed to watch TV. They would always go to a different floor and turn on the TV, and then I'd have to run up and down the stairs. In addition, at the vice president's residence, there's a door opener, what we would consider a garage door opener on the table. You push the button, and that would call the stewards because the residence is staffed by Navy stewards who prepare the food, serve the food, take care of the home. Well, these are staff people that I call on a regular basis to say, the vice president's having such and such for dinner. Here's the food requirements, etc. They were my colleagues, my peers. But when I was there, that we'd have dinner at the table and I'd get up to go get a glass of water instead of pushing the button. And they came back to me and they said, Anne, you have to push the button. When you're here taking care of the children, you're a guest. I said, I can't ask you to do that. So I would not ask for anything more at the table because it was so awkward. But it was, those are the memories.
Yeah.
I could write a book about things like that with just the things that happen behind the scenes.
I'm sure. Those experiences are awesome. You should write a book. You should write them down at a very minimum.
They're all kind of written down.
They're
I always struggle. They're my memories, and they were phenomenal. Yeah. And I'll tell you, a little girl from Galva, Illinois, to work for the vice president, to have opportunities like that. I went to my high school class reunion once, and one of my classmates said, and this was when I was working at the White House, he says, well, does the vice president know your name? And that question threw me for a loop a little bit because, he's my boss. He calls me. He yells at me. I'm like, yeah.
I think he knows.
But it never occurred. When you're in these roles, you're putting one foot in front of the other. And how lucky am I? How blessed am I that I had the opportunity to do it?
That's awesome. It's awesome. So after staying with the vice president for a time after he left office, you went to work for the Republican National Committee and you were chief of staff. You're still involved with the RNC, but today versus long ago, during the Quayle years and the George H.W. years, you've seen massive shifts in politics. What the parties stand for today is a lot different than what they stood for 20 years ago, of course, and plus. But talk about where we are today. Let's get into politics a little bit, and how navigating today's politics is different in some aspects than it would have been, when you started back in D.C.
I think the biggest difference and the biggest impact is the 24/7 news and social media.
Yeah.
It was so different. As I mentioned, the news of the day was front page above the fold Washington Post, and that would guide our day every day.
Yeah.
I remember when I first started the Treasury, UPI and AP tickers were running because we were always checking the markets, and those don't exist anymore because they're all on our computers, all of our computers, all day, every day. But it's really made a significant impact because the way we would do the schedules, the way we would introduce policy, the way we would travel across the country to engage constituents in some of these announcements and go to certain places, you don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
I probably sound like a dinosaur, but I miss that because I believe that drove truly a different grassroots up type of inclusion in policy decisions that we don't have today.
Yeah.
I also think because it moves so quickly, the RNC's role has changed. You have 168 members who were very much hands-on. In the days when I was at the White House or at the RNC and working with both entities and coordinating, things are much more staff-driven. The staff has become critically more important because things are happening so quickly.
Yeah.
And you can't bring everybody into the loop. If you do, it leaks, and then it takes a life of its own. And so from an internal position, things are much more controlled and done with a very small group as opposed to inclusion. And I think that's been a detriment to politics.
Yeah, it feels like it. So we're obviously going through a very rough time, a very scary time, I would say, in politics with the rhetoric and really the political violence that we're witnessing. Incredibly sad events, most recently with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, but it's been happening more, it seems like, at a faster pace to Republicans and Democrats. There have been issues, violent attacks again and again the last few years, especially. Do you see? I know it's tough to be hopeful right now, but do you have any ideas of how we can get back to a more civilized society, especially in the world of politics? I mean, you mentioned the news cycle. Social media obviously drives a lot of this. It's not the only factor, but it's a factor. Do you have any hope for us turning the corner back to a more civilized debate and a debate of ideas versus these kind of personal attacks and literal attacks?
I'm hopeful. It gets really difficult when the extremes on both sides are dug in and the middle is trying to figure out how to have a conversation. When I was state chairman, I took some criticism from folks, but I stand firm in the fact that I'm a 70-30 Republican. There's about 70% of the party that I and our ideology and that I agree with, but there's about 30% that still need work. And I would be hopeful that as a country we can have conversations about what we agree on, but also what we don't agree on, and figure out how to come together.
Yeah.
I know this, again, will make me sound old, but I remember the pictures of Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, getting together to have a beer, to have a conversation. It would be my wish, and what I'm committed to, is having conversations where we can really talk about how to come together. I'm a team builder.
Yeah.
I believe in, I want America and I want Indiana to be the best they can be. I want to be at the tip of the spear, not the middle of the spear.
Right.
So how do we engage in conversations where everybody is a winner and that we're trying to come together to move forward?
Yeah. More ahead with Anne Hathaway, President and CEO of Hathaway Strategies, when we return to Off the Record, presented by Prolific. Stay with us.
Episode is brought to you by Prolific, the growth firm, helping visionary leaders accelerate growth. This fall, we're bringing that mission to life with the Prolific Growth Summit, an exclusive one-day experience at Rally on September 24th in Indianapolis. Hear from world-class voices like Patrick Lencioni, Hobby Lobby founder David Green, Goldman Sachs' Heidi Cruz, and NBA player and entrepreneur Jonathan Isaac. Join top CEOs and executives right here in our city. Learn more at prolificgrowthsummit.com.
Welcome back to Off the Record podcast. I'm Nate Feltman, CEO of IBJ Media. I'm talking today with Anne Hathaway, President and CEO of Hathaway Strategies, an Indianapolis-based public affairs firm. So, Anne, I want to get back to the conversation. You mentioned in 2009 you make the move back to Indiana from D.C., and you started your public affairs firm. Talk about your decision to leave D.C. Was that a difficult decision? And talk about how you came to the decision to start your firm in Indianapolis then.
Sure. It was a hard decision because so many of my friends and colleagues were staying in DC, and that was my womb, so to speak. That was a safe environment. But I'm a Midwesterner, and I wanted to be back in the Midwest. I wanted to be close to home. My parents were aging at the time, and I wanted to be a short drive. It was 3.5 hours to my folks' home, and I could be there if I was needed, and I could be a part of that. I love the opportunity to be in DC and be a part of something bigger, but I missed Sunday nights at home. And I wanted to be around my brother's children. I was having children and I wanted to be a part of their lives. So then, it was like, okay, what am I going to do? And I had this.
Was it the interior design coming back?
I pretty much at that point it was anything, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wasn't sure. I was really down because we'd lost the election, and I had this big resume, but nobody was knocking on my door, quite honestly. And I had an opportunity to do a project or two. And I'm like, okay. So then I called my attorney and said, okay, what do I do? I need to take this, I'm going to take these clients. And she said, you need to form a company and file these papers, etc.
Yeah.
So I would love to tell you that it was a big, broad plan and that I knew what I was doing. I can honestly tell you, I go to candidates and I tell them, if you're going to run for office, we need to write a business plan. We need to write a campaign plan. We need to write a budget. I didn't do that.
Yeah.
I started my company on my credit card. Didn't know anything about investment money from others. I didn't think I was going to do it very long, but there was a market for someone who had the relationships that I did and was willing to dig in and solve problems. I tend to be a pretty strategic thinker, and there's always a way straight or around, and I'm always trying to figure out how to make others look good, or figure out how to solve the problem with the best solution. And 15, almost 16 years later, we're still here, and it's a small team. We cover a lot of ground. We get involved in a lot of key issues. We take the tools that we learned in politics and help to drive constituents to engage in public advocacy, whether for or against, but to use their voice. So many people don't know that the State House is their house, that the Capitol is their capital, and that their voices matter and their votes matter. And so that's the convergence of politics, government, and business for me with regard to how to combine the three things that I love and know best.
And so, talk about the different kinds of clients you have. What I mean by that, are most of your clients focused on statewide issues? Are some of them local issues? Are some of them political candidates? Are they all the above?
All of the above.
I'm just curious to kind of what are the different, slices that you of your business?
All of the above. We get a lot of calls from folks in DC who need work at the state level. So those relationships I developed there continue to pay off here, and that's fun for me to maintain them. We have statewide candidates. We have local candidates. I've tried to get out of the day-to-day campaign world. It's for the young. And when I'm working on a campaign that's always on my shoulder, I don't sleep well. I think about it 24/7. And I feel a real obligation to the candidates that we work with. And so I personally am trying to focus more on other projects. Some are not for profit. Some are strategic planning. Some are about the relationships. Some are about engaging in both federal and state legislative action. But it's really my job is to provide everyday Hoosiers a voice in policymaking.
Yeah, that's awesome. You've had lots of different kinds of assignments and projects, I know, which makes work interesting. So I want to talk about one of the projects that you've been involved for a long time in a leadership role. As I mentioned the Richard G. Lugar Excellence in Public Service series. I know that's really important to you, and you've been involved for a long, long time. And I know it's had a huge positive impact here in Indiana. Talk a little bit how you got involved with that program and the importance of that program.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The Lugar series is my passion project, and I absolutely love the opportunity to engage, to educate, and to coach women to engage in public service and campaigns, and help to find their seat, their place with regard to how to dig in and become involved. When I moved back to Indiana from being chief of staff, and I actually never actually left Indiana, I've been a Hoosier all those times in the same house. I was trying to figure out I was creating Hathaway Strategies, what I wanted to do. And actually, the Lugar Series executive director at the time was preparing to retire. And so the women on the board came to me and said, would you be interested in doing this? And I said, I'd be interested in doing it as a project because there's some other things I want to do. And so they were willing to work with me to make it fit into my company plan.
Yeah.
The program was supposed to sunset after 10 years.
Oh, is that right?
We really they believed when they began it, Judy Singleton, Teresa Lubbers, great women leaders, that we would be at parity, that women would be 50-50 in elected office, that we would be sitting in the White House as president or as vice president, and that things would move at a much faster rate than they did. Well, we didn't sunset. 36 years later, we're still fighting to get more women elected and more women involved, and working hard at it. But we select 20 women every year. They meet from October till April, once a month. I have people who ask me regularly to participate in the class. We talk about state government, local government, federal government. We go to DC for 4 days in May. We talk about policy. We talk about how to engage, how not to. We do speech training. We really try to go through the inventory of the skills that women need to engage in public policy in an effective way.
Yeah.
We don't get involved in campaigns. We really focus on being the starting point where women decide how to find their seat in public service. Mm-hmm. And we've had huge success. Erin Houchin, member of Congress, a number of state legislators. Sue Ellspermann was a lieutenant governor. Currently, Elise Nishala as state auditor. Kelly Mitchell as former state treasurer. There are a number of women in the past administrations. Currently, Lisa Hirschman, Susie Jaworski.
Yeah.
She was just on this week, I think.
Yes, she is. Yeah.
But encouraging women to lean in, to figure out how to balance all of the things on their plate, but to lead on policy, to lead on politics. Yeah. When I went to go to recruit candidates to run for office, when I was running the House campaigns here in 99 and 2000, it's the year I asked Eric Holcomb to run for legislature, I would go to men and they would lean in immediately, Nate. They would say, yeah, I'm in. They didn't have to call home. They didn't want to check. They were ready to go. But when I would try to recruit women, they didn't know enough. They just weren't sure.
Yeah.
They had to check at home. They weren't sure who was going to take care of the children. So it's been over the last 25 years, truly a mindset and a change that you can do it all, but some things have to give and take.
So would you say it's just a matter of time before we have we got to at some point have a woman governor and a woman president?
I do.
We're not there yet, but it seems like we should be.
We get closer and closer every year. I go back to the old adage, though: candidates matter.
Yeah.
And so we teach all the tools in the toolkit for running campaigns, but also the candidates. Their personality, their appeal in the media, their ideology, that all matters.
Yeah.
And at one point it will come together, whether it be Republican or Democrat, we'll have a woman. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but we also worked with Hoosier Women Forward. Democrats wanted a Lugar series. And so we actually sat down with the folks that were interested in putting that together. We shared our bylaws. We shared our class information.
Wow.
Because at the end of the day, while we are Republican, we really wanted to be an advocate women. For all women.
Yeah.
And so we've crossed with regard to working together.
That's great. Did they start that program up then? It's going good. That's awesome. That's a great story. Mm-hmm. That's that's a positive, hopeful for Hoosiers
Mhm.
and for listeners in terms of your work to have civilized and a supportive environment for women and generally others. That's fantastic.
It was truly about
Yeah.
advancing all women, and
It's-
whether they chose to be Republican or Democrat wasn't. It was really trying to make sure that
That's awesome.
we had more women in public service.
So speaking of influencing women, talk about who have been influences for you, who have been mentors, who have you looked up to as leaders and said, I need to incorporate some leadership aspect of that person, or they've mentored you along the way. Who's been important in your life?
One of the most important women for me was Joanne Davidson. Joanne Davidson was the former Speaker of the House in Ohio. She was the first woman, and I believe has been the only woman. She passed away last year. She also went on to be the Bush chairman in Ohio in 2000, and also was named to be the RNC co-chair while I was working there and while I was chief of staff, and then also was the committee on arrangements chair, the chair of the convention in 2008, which is the role I had in Milwaukee in 2024. What I loved about Joanne and what I learned from her, I was really abrasive. I was eager to achieve, be right. And what I learned from her and what she taught me was velvet. Putting that you could achieve all those things and you could advance and you could be a leader, but you didn't have to have the rough edges, that you could put velvet on it and you could get it done and still be kind. And that's been a difference maker for me really in most of my career.
Yeah.
I also learned from her that it was important to not just listen, but to hear. I was so anxious I heard, but I was so anxious to say what I had to say that I didn't always hear what I was being told. And that made a big difference as well. And so she helped me in so many ways to be a better leader.
Yeah.
And to hopefully be a role model for other women. It was so when I started, it was so competitive. There were few women at the table and staying at the table, and you would find out you were in a contest that you didn't know that you'd entered because people presumed and assumed they would place their ambition on you and think that you wanted that.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for where I am every day. I had no idea what the opportunities would be.
Yeah.
And truly, whatever I've achieved, I've been very fortunate. I had my goal. Remember when you did 5 and 10-year goals?
Yeah.
I exceeded those way before I ever anticipated it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're in the White House. I mean, you're like, now what?
Exactly.
It's awesome. Those two lessons that you picked up from her, I think those are great ones for everybody to live by. I mean, the listening one is, I think, is so important and often not completely understood. Instead of just getting out what you have to say, but listening and then thinking and then speaking. Right? I mean, that's those are great ones. So, my last question before we get to a little bit of a speed round and have some fun is for those that are really interested, maybe young people who are really interested in getting involved in politics. Of course, there's the Lugar series that you described so well, but and you described your own experience of yard signs and bumper stickers, getting started that way. What's your advice to a young person that is thinking about getting engaged? And maybe the second part, as part of that question, I'm sure a lot of people are turned off right now, really, really turned off, and want to stay as far away as they can from politics. But I know you're going to say that's not the answer, and I'm going to say that too. But talk a little bit about why they should and how they should.
Well, why they should is because politics is the pathway to government. And government, whether it be state, local, federal is critical to all of us and our businesses, what we do every day. So we have to be a part of it and we have to engage. So the best way to do that is through politics. And whether it be interest in policy, whether it be interest in campaigns, there are people like me who are always looking for talent and looking for people who have the heart and the desire. I shouldn't tell you this, but I have coffee with anybody that asks. I fit it in my schedule. It drives my team crazy. But you just never know how and I get notes and letters all the time from people say, you gave me the courage to lean in, to volunteer. Awesome. But if you're going to volunteer, or if you're going to be an intern, or if you're going to be a new staffer in an office, be the first one in, the last one out. Do anything you're asked to do. Don't be too busy on your phone to be unaware of what's going on in the office. Yeah. It's really fun for me. One of the interns that we had at State Party when I was chair is now actually the personal aide for the current governor. And if you'd have told me on day one that's where he would wind up, I would have told you you're crazy. But he leaned in. He got involved. He listened. He knew when to go make coffee. He knew when to anticipate what people were going to need as they were coming and going. And that put him in a position to go, hey, let's give him a different role. Let's see how he does.
Exactly.
I don't think it's changed much from where when I got involved. Yeah. It's about getting involved. It's about being earnest and working hard and developing the relationships. I'm always thinking about, who do I want in my foxhole? Yeah. Who do I want on my team? Who do we need on this campaign? I can't tell you, when I look back at the 2024 GOP convention, very few of those folks had worked on a convention before, because we didn't have a real convention in 2020. The last one was 2016. Yeah. So they were novices. They didn't know, but they wanted to learn. And we put on the best Republican convention ever. And so it's all about finding those people who have the passion, the desire, but also the discipline to do what needs to be done and to follow through.
Yeah. It's great advice. I'm going to ask one more question because, what you just described, I know is what you've done in your career, going all in. And I mentioned a lot of things you're involved in, but you're also involved with me on the Economic Club, which you've been a huge just supporter and obviously been very involved at a higher level with the Economic Club, which has been a great historical organization for this city for over 50 years. And but the question I want to ask you is, you're involved in so many different things. How do you balance it? Because I struggle with balancing a lot. I say yes too many times. You probably had to share that same problem of saying yes, but do you have any secrets for keeping all those balls in the air at the same time and doing what you do, which is you are all in. You don't sign up for something and not participate. So I'm curious if you got any tips on that front.
I don't, and I'm not good at it. I've sacrificed a lot of things, but I do have, I had the opportunity to be with both my parents as they passed away. I have a great family. I have great friends, but I've given up the fact that my biggest regret is not having my own child. But I've had my 24-year-old nephew living with me for a year and a half, and he's now in law school. So I'm understanding. I'm understanding parenting at a whole different level. But I don't know how to do. I don't. If I'm going to be in, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it well. It's going to do right. That being said, I've said to people often, I don't need to be the president of everything. I really just want to be on the team. I love to push from behind. But I really love this community. I love Indianapolis. I love the state. And I'm very passionate about trying to figure out how to make it better. Yeah. And that starts with creating leaders and leading by example. And you do the same thing. And we see each other in the same meetings. And I just feel really lucky that this is where I get to call home.
Yeah, I do too. Well said. All right, we're going to have some fun.
Okay.
We call this the off the record speed round, where you try to give me some quick answers, whatever comes to your mind first. So, your favorite movie of all time?
Yeah, this one's hard. I could do Sound of Music, The Way We Were, with The Wizard of Oz. I fall asleep during movies, if I'm really honest with you, so I'm not a great
You're
movie
working
girl.
too hard. Well, you just named a few good ones. Favorite place to vacation?
My lake. I have a lake home in Illinois, and it's where I go to hide. And
that's awesome.
I regroup there. I thought I was going to be a big entertainer, and I found out that it's where I find peace and
Wind
that
down.
I can dig back in.
That's awesome. Favorite musical artist?
Well, right now, I'm a bit of an Eagles groupie. I've been out to the Sphere twice.
I heard about that.
And I would go back a third time if I could convince somebody to go.
Yeah.
They're 78, 79 years old, and you don't realize it, but you know every single word. And they bring back great memories.
Awesome.
And it's just, I'm a
I haven't
groupie.
experienced the Sphere yet, but I want to get out there. I've heard it was great.
Well, Zach Brown's going to be there in January. I'm trying to figure out how to get there.
That's awesome. First thing you do in the morning?
Look at my phone.
Yeah. We all have that problem, I think. Title of the last book you read or your favorite book?
So I did not. I listened to a lot of Audible books when I was driving back and forth to Milwaukee. So I gave myself this summer my permission to do beach reads. So I've been actually going through the Colleen Hoover series and books. And I can honestly tell you the last book was a Colleen Hoover book, and I have no idea what the title was.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. They all kind of are the same.
Right. A food you can't live without. Your favorite?
Ice cream.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite sport to watch?
I love Big Ten basketball.
Nice. Do you have a favorite team?
Yes. I went to the University of Illinois.
Of
I
course.
was so sad.
Are you going to be at the IU Illinois football game that's coming up in a
week? Yes.
Yeah,
because my second favorite sport is football, and is Big Ten football. I really, really, truly decided I wanted to go to a Big Ten college. I was a cheerleader in high school. It was as much about being part of the athletics. And Illinois wasn't good when I went to college, but we got better.
Oh, yeah.
But I love Big Ten basketball. I love the Final Four. I'm so excited about the Final Four being here next year. Oh,
yeah, it's going to be fun.
It's going to be great. Well, it's got a great chair.
Yeah, well, co-chair, yeah. Best advice you ever received?
My father told me that I needed to look in the mirror and be happy with me and not succumb to what was politically correct, what my friends wanted, peer pressure. But I had to live with me, and I had to be satisfied with that. And it was really good advice. And oftentimes, whether it be politics, girl things, I've come back to that advice that I have to be comfortable with me.
That's awesome. That's awesome advice. So, lastly, advice for a young person who wants to be the next Anne Hathaway, wants to be a leader in this community. Mm-hmm. Like, what advice would you give that person? You've already shared some really good. You've already shared some good anecdotes from your learnings, but anything else that comes to mind or something similar?
My advice is lean in.
Yeah.
Say yes, and do it to the best of your ability.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Anne, you've been an awesome podcast guest, and I want to thank you for participating on the Off the Record, the Indiana 250 podcast, and also really want to thank you for just being a great Hoosier, for all the great work you've done on behalf of Hoosiers for lots and lots of years. You're a great leader for our community, and just appreciate all that you do.
Thank you so much. It means a lot to be here. Thanks.
Thanks, Anne. To learn more about other leaders on IBJ Media's Indiana 250 list, go to indiana250.com and look for a Page 2 feature each week in IBJ. We'll be back with the new Indiana 250 off-the-record conversation soon.
Stay ahead with Inside Indiana Business Radio on Demand, your go-to source for the latest business news across the Hoosier State. Join hosts Gary Dick and Alex Brown every weekday morning and afternoon for concise updates on Indiana's top business stories. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast app or listen at ibjpodcasts.com.
On the go? So are we. Get the IBJ Media app, your all-in-one news source for Indiana business news. Get breaking news alerts, read every story from IBJ, Inside Indiana Business, and the Indiana Lawyer, and listen to your favorite podcasts all in one place. Big news, small screen. Search IBJ Media and download the app today.